So, welcome to the Liminal Gallery Q&A. I am Louise Fitzjohn. I am the curator of this show, and this is Olivia Strange. This is fantastic artwork. She's part of the exhibition, I'm just going to dive into the questions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how does your work relate to the exhibition theme of reclaiming your power?
I think it very directly relates. My work is about the experience of womanhood and the female body, and the sort of patriarchal descriptors that have been imposed on the body historically, and my work is kind of trying to fight against that and provide like an alternative view of women and the female body and this idea of femininity, and kind of refute the binary ideals that are kind of enforced upon women. So yeah, my works, this particularly the sculpture, it kind of speaks to female pleasure, the female body in an eroticized state, and kind of the kind of messiness, realness, and sort of graphicness of the body that is sort of has kind of historically been shamed or hidden and kind of repressed. So yeah, I'm trying to sort of draw the viewer in with this sort of very innocent looking, edible looking kind of thing, and then when you get up close you realise it's actually a little bit pornographic.
Yeah, it is quite subtle.
Yeah.
And I mean, like this one especially, it could be a column, it could be a cake, you know, that they kind of put up on these kind of plinths to celebrate, but also there's something really delicious about them, like the textures. And, so you often work with the colour pink. What draws you to it?
Well, pink is such a political, complicated colour, and I wanted to use it so that I'm kind of borrowing sort of established identities and then trying to subvert them and distort them to kind of create a tension in the work between like what is sort of the normalised ideals and then the kind of the alternative view that I'm trying to portray. So it's a kind of reclaiming of the colour pink, that idea of like the feminine and pink being like this sort of weak or delicate or girliness, which I don't agree with, but it's also kind of really sort of entrenched in queer culture as well. Like it's been co-opted and reappropriated to have like a different meaning. So again, it's like a way of drawing the viewer in, thinking it's one thing, kind of like, oh, it's a lovely, cakey, innocent, sort of edible, delicious looking thing, and then you kind of get up close, it's like, actually, no, it's so much more. It's all these other things, and that's okay. And like, it's a real sort of celebration, but sort of like a kind of like, no, this like, it's not binary, and I don't agree with anything, viewing anything as binary. I think of everything as fluid, particularly like, you know, sexuality, gender, all of those kind of tropes, so yeah.
And pink is such an interesting colour because it's had such an interesting history, because it was, you know, like there was a colour for boys, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and it was for girls, and somehow, I don't really know all the details, but like they changed over, and then all of a sudden pink was this kind of weaker colour for the girls, but before it was this really strong colour for boys. You know, it's got a lot of history to it. It's a really interesting colour.
And also like kids' toys, like I've seen it a lot. I've got two nieces, and like Barbie dolls, the pink Barbie house, the pink car, the pink everything, and then like there's a doctor's set which is blue, a nurse's set is pink.
Right.
So like it's so entrenched in like these stereotypes, and like that's for boys and this is for girls, and it's really fucked stuff.
Yeah, it is really sad, isn't it? You know, like, that there's this kind of separation, and it's just through use of colour.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, you can only play with this if you're a boy, you can only play with this if you're a girl. It is really messed up. So your works are full of contradictions. They are soft but hard, feminine but masculine. What do you hope that they kind of say to the viewer?
I guess following on from the sort of the stuff about kind of pink and sort of really established normalizations of like gender or sexuality, or like how we're supposed to perform those things. I'm kind of trying to take all these different materials and textures, like soft and hard, cold, warm, and sort of create like a mashup of everything, because nothing is that binary, in my opinion, and it can be one or it can be the other, or it can be both, and lots of other things at the same time. So it's sort of just trying to create an alternative image of something that's that has that tension between one and the other, and kind of speaks to like the language of pleasure and like sexual pleasure as well, particularly, but also all of the other things that a person can be at the same time, and sort of really celebrate that as well.
Yeah, there's no person is like just one thing, you know, and I love that you're representing the reality of, you know, of all of those things, you know, that it's messy, that, you know, the human body looks the way it does, and it's not kind of, you know, pristine, and there's a lot of like textures, and I love especially in your sculptural works, like the plaster is kind of matte, and then you've got these like lovely, like real glaze, that kind of shiny glaze that is so tactile.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like bodily fluids.
Yeah. So are your works autobiographical, or do you pull from historical references?
Both. I think a lot of, all of my work draws upon my experiences of living a very heteronormative life, kind of like call it my previous life, where I was in a heterosexual relationship. I hadn't really, like, I sort of had identified my queerness, but I hadn't really, like, reconciled that, or it was just such a confusing time. I was in that life for, like, 12 years longer, and then sort of just left it all, and kind of had to start again and relearn how to be who I actually am, and kind of get rid of, like, literally break all of these sort of restrictions and kind of senses of like how I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do, how everyone wants me to be, and then like and it was a really challenging time, like obviously with family members or long-term friends who've known you to be one way, and then you're kind of like, no, that's not who I am, I'm actually this person, and like I'd sort of come out once before and then sort of been shoved back in the closet. So it was really like being really firm about that, like, no, like you can say all the stuff you want and ask all these questions, but it's not going to change anything. So a lot, like all of my work actually like speaks to that experience, and like all of the sort of the contradictions of like, well, if I'm queer, then I must be this, and I shouldn't like that, but I do like this, so what does that mean? Am I like a crap lesbian, like all of this stuff. But then also I look at a lot of Greek and Roman mythology and like classical references in art as well. And my family are all Italian, and like although I grew up in Britain, my grandmother was like a really like matriarchal Italian woman, and her house, like I didn't realise it as a kid, but my experience in her home was quite exotic and different. Like there were columns everywhere, and stucco, and pink carpet, and chandeliers, and gilding, and like velvet curtains, and it was like this amazing like fantasy land kind of place. And it wasn't until I went to Italy, like years and years later, that suddenly like a lot of things made sense that had never really made sense. And so the pedestal that all my sculptures are kind of take form of is actually like an adaptation of a Roman column, and sort of speaks to the aesthetics of my childhood being in that environment, but also in the 80s when everything was kind of like a little bit fake. So like it looks like a palm tree, but it's not a palm tree, or it looks like a Roman column, but it's actually like this hollow bit of plastic. And so kind of like again a bit of a mash-up of all of those different things.
It's really interesting that you were saying about you had to break down these like barriers and restrictions. Do you feel like those restrictions were imposed on you like as a young person, and that's what you had to break away from? Also, like just convincing people this is not a phase. Did you have to do a lot of that?
All of that. Yeah. It was hard. And just like it made me realise like when like this idea of like gender being performed, I totally agree with that. And like I think however you grow up, like if you grow up in a particular environment which is quite sort of restrictive, and you're not kind of the sort of natural the natural discussion isn't like you just do you, and whatever that is, that's fine, and we love you and accept you, and like if you want to wear this or you want to do that, it doesn't matter what you are, you just crack on. Which like if I were to have a child, that is how I would want it to be. So it kind of so many parts of myself were those sort of learned ways of performing that kind of imposed idea of what a girl or a woman should be. And then just sort of I think there's also a pressure to sort of be totally the opposite of that as well, in order to be authentic or like whatever. So I think it was also like just working out like which of these, like which bits I actually want to keep and which bits I don't want, and just like dismantling it all. And like, obviously probably there's still a lot that is still ingrained that I'm not aware of, but it's just it's a minefield, I think.
Yeah, it just takes so much self-awareness to be able to look at that as well. I mean, it's something that I don't think many people have ever had to do, like just look at the things that you do and why you do them, like who told you to be like this, to do this thing, and it's like manners, you learn manners, and like as kids they don't know what it means, and they don't know that, they don't understand that it might upset someone, but they're just told to do it. By cookies and thank yous, and it's just something so simple as that, but like when you grow up using it, and so there's so many things that we do we're not even aware of it. Interesting. So tell me about your use of ready-mades alongside your molded sculptures.
Ready-mades, I think I've always worked with them. When I first started making sculpture, I only used ready-mades and made sort of like assemblages and things, and was really interested in sort of the embedded meaning in objects and how we sort of impose meaning or identities on objects, and also like how you can take an object, like a domestic object. Actually, a lot of my work had domestic objects, and I quite like the idea of like taking something ordinary and everyday that has a very specific kind of identity and purpose and use, and then sort of somehow projecting like an alternative reality for that object. Like there was this like household plant that I worked with for a long time. It was just like a regular like Dracaena, like spider plant thing. But I thought it wanted to be a palm tree, and I was working in like an office in a day job, and it was like the horror of repetition and the mundanity of every day and all that stuff that was like very much my reality, and also probably like I didn't realise it at the time, but the way I was looking at that plant was also kind of how I was living at the time. So yeah, I kind of created this whole fantasy about this plant being a portal to another world, which is like beautiful and sunny, but it's nighttime and it's like a bit dark and a bit seedy, and it's like a performer and it's a palm tree and it's like a gateway to a utopia and all this stuff, and I made films about it and wrote letters to it and poems, and so that's definitely been an ongoing kind of element of my practice. I think in this more recent work, there are like, I suppose I kind of reduced it down to like more specific objects. Like in one of my previous sculptures, there's a carabiner clip, which is like, there's a bit of a kind of association with queer culture, like sapphic culture and the carabiner clip. So it's like on there, and there's also an O-ring that's kind of piercing this shell-like kind of vulvic kind of looking thing. Mm-hmm. So I really think about the object that I want to use and somehow like mess with the identities or utilise the identities to kind of speak to the thing that I'm trying to say.
I love, and in the sculpture, you've got like the little piercings, and they're just so delicate. And I just noticed that are they like yours, because your nose ring is like the same?
Yeah.
I just love how like delicate they are. Like they're just because you've got like this shell which is so hard.
Yeah.
And you've got these really soft little delicate, just piercing it, but it's so tiny. How do you get through? It's like a really nice like playfulness with it as well.
Yeah.
So your paintings are loose and full of energy, as well as a bold colour palette. Do you plan your imagery and palette, or is it intuitive?
Probably a bit of both. I plan it to some extent. Like I know, like for example with this one, like I kind of knew that I wanted it to be quite like a bit of a power pose and sort of like very self-assured and a little bit like almost dismissive, like I'm in the room, everyone fuck off kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then also like again thinking about the colours and like that tension and like all the different meanings that are sort of embedded in those two things. But then I find like if I try and be really precise about brush strokes and stuff, I really don't like the work that comes out of that. So I sort of have to just get into a headspace where I'm not panicking about what I'm doing or thinking about it too much.
Yeah.
Sort of have the idea of what I want to do and then just kind of let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a bit like the style of the brush strokes, a bit more like bodily and a bit more kind of like there's like an energy in them that I don't think I can get when I'm really thinking about vertical paint. Yeah.
I was talking to someone about this work yesterday actually, and how and it's so loose, but then you've got like areas where it's just like there's a lot of paint in this, like really detailed, and he really liked this knee. He was really obsessed with the knee because like the rest of the body is really loose in there, like you've got like a very faint line for this leg over here, but then the knee is just, there's like all these kind of details. You've got the highlights in there, you've got that lovely blue coming out as well, and it's just surprising, I think, like, because usually people would like detail like the face or, he was very excited about the knee.
I love that.
I guess because it's like right in the centre as well.
Yeah.
It's just got like so much I don't know, there's just like so much energy that it just feels really like exciting. You can see that you've just really gone for it.
Yeah. I love it with oil painting particularly as well. Like you can get that, you can really get a brush stroke, and it sort of holds, and it is quite visceral and like a little bit edible. You kind of want to like pick it or lick it or something.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a really, really tactile piece, and that area there got very excited. And then I was also speaking to someone else, and the boobs around here, she said that they look like this cake that they make in Sicily, and it's called I can't remember in Italian, but
Virgin boobs.
The virgin boobs. And it's got this perfect little like moulded cake with a cherry on top. And she was like, it looks the same.
I've got a bit of a funny joke about those cakes with my girlfriend. We were in the shop once and I saw two white buns and I was like, they look like your boobs. And she was like, yeah, they do actually.
You should agree.
She'll kill me for telling you that.
Well, good. So the reference is there. It's a valid thing to say. So your titles are playful and provocative. Is provoking the viewer something you're interested in?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's like a defiance in there somewhere that just kind of wants to not wind people up, but just maybe just like poke a little bit at something, but also like I always want to try and give the viewer a way into the work, because I personally I don't like it when it's really difficult when you're looking at a work of art to like really like situate yourself or understand it in any way. I really want to help the viewer into it and identify with it, and also like just get a sense of what I'm trying to say. So I think titles, I really think about my titles, and I kind of really want to try and help like transcend the concept of the work, but also be a little bit playful as well. And also I like to use like references from pop culture and stuff. Like this is called God is a Woman, which is an Ariana Grande song, which I listen to on repeat when I was like in between like Het life and New Queer life, and I like didn't know what it was, and I was just listening to this song all the time. So yeah.
No, I did. You've used an X instead of an A. Tell me about that as well.
So, well, this is a bit of a controversial thing actually.
Right.
Like it's intended to be inclusive, but there is a bit of a debate around whether it really is inclusive or not. But I think I definitely want to be inclusive, and so I decided to go with that rather than not, which maybe, I mean, I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but I just want to be clear about the fact that when I refer to women or feminine, I'm not situating those meanings in biology. I'm situating that in anyone who identifies as that. Right. And I want to be totally inclusive of all communities when I'm speaking about those things. So that's why I decided to just have the X rather than the A. Yeah.
So who or what are your greatest influences?
Got a few, mostly women. When I first started making art, when I was like, well, I was probably a kid, but when I like really was thinking about it, Tracy Emin, I just absolutely loved her. I thought she was wicked. Yeah. I met her in a pub once, so I had a really good conversation, and just love her work as well. Yeah. And also like for the time that she was like in the 80s and 90s when she was making that work, like I know like some people have a lot to say about that work, but like for the time that she was making those statements, I think it's really brave and powerful and like amazing. So yeah. But then also I love Laura Provost's work. It's just all those like there's deliciousness and like that kind of visceralness, and it's playful, and she also uses a lot of poetry and like spoken word, which I love. I never pronounce her name right, but Alina Shaposhnikov.
Okay.
Who's a Polish artist.
Yeah.
Made these beautiful sculptures
Right.
that are just, again, like they're like fragmented body parts that are kind of put, sort of deconstructed and then put back together. They speak to like the bodily experience, and they're really like loads of kind of different materials, really visceral, a little bit pop arty, but also not. Yeah, really love the work.
Nice. So you met Tracy in the pub. I mean, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Did you go up to her?
I did, yeah. It was in Spitalfields, like probably about 8 or 9 years ago.
Right.
And I knew the woman that ran the pub, and I knew that it was right by where Tracy lived, and I just saw her there, and I went over and kind of was like, "Hi, can I talk to you?" I was holding a pint, and she kind of looked at me and was like, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I just think you're like one of the best artists of our generation. I really want to chat to you." She's like, "Oh, all right, you can sit down." It's just that, so I had so many pints thrown over me, I wasn't quite sure what you were about to do.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realise that people would react to her that way. That's insane.
Yeah. I was like making applications for MAs at the time, and I wanted some advice, and she gave me really good advice. And she was lovely. Yeah.
Nice. You know, they say never meet your heroes, but that was a good one.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you have any other exhibitions or projects coming up that you want to talk about?
I'm working with 2 other artists on curating a show, which is in the process of like working it all out and inviting artists. I think that'll be probably early summer, I reckon, or maybe end of the year, not sure yet. And then I've got another show in May that I'm doing with the Ingram collection. It was in the prize last year. And then I've also got my online solo show with Liminal Gallery. I'm very excited about.
Yeah, me too. So the show that you're curating, is that going to be in London?
Yeah, I think
nice.
so.
Have you curated a show before?
Nope, not really. A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very steep learning curve.
Yeah, is it with a few other people?
Yeah, two other artists that I met. I was on the London Creative Network mentoring scheme last year or the year before, and I met them. Like it was all on Zoom because it was like COVID lockdown time. And we got put in like a side Zoom room, and the timer was ticking down, and I just went, "Do you want to curate a show with me?" And they were like, "Yeah," and then they cut. And then, And then we were meeting up every week throughout the whole of the pandemic on Zoom and chatting. We didn't actually meet each other in real life until like 6 months later or something.
That's a nice thing to come out of lockdown.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Alright, well that's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Everyone for coming.
Thanks.
Yay.